about greatest common factor and difference of squares. Okay, so number one, or first question says, what does GCF stand for? So write down those 3 letters on your paper. Write it down. GCF. Write down those 3 letters on your paper. GCF. Anybody know what it stands for? Good. Greatest common factor. So write this down, please. Greatest common factor. Greatest common factor. Okay, so what is the GCF of 16 and 24? So how about writing those 2 numbers on your paper, 16 and 24? What is something that divides into 16 and 24? 8, okay? I'm just going to write it down for a minute. What else goes into 16 and 24? 4. What else goes into both of them? 2, okay? But it's called the greatest common factor. So by common, it has to go into both of them. They both have to have it in common. So 8 goes into both of them. 4 goes into both of them, and 2 goes into both of them. They have that in common. But the greatest means you have to pick the greatest one. What's the greatest one? 8. So the greatest common factor of those 2 is 8. Okay? All right, so what about 12 and 18? Let me call on some people. All right, Madison, what's something that goes into 12 and 18? What? 6. Okay. Chase, what's something else that goes into both of them? 2. And allows you to know the other number that goes into both of them? Okay, anybody? 3. Okay, so those are the numbers that go into both. That's what they have in common, but the greatest one is what? 6. So that would be that. Okay. Okay, now we've got x squared and x to the 4th. X squared and x to the 4th. Okay, so this one, let me pause this just for, we've got x squared and x to the 4th. So this is 2x's and this is 4x's. So what's the most x's they could have in common? 2. It's x squared. That always throws people off because of the whole greatest thing. They want to pick the greatest one, but they've got to have them in common. They can't have more than 2 in common. So x squared. Okay. All right, any questions about those? All right, so number 1, write down 169 x squared y to the 4th and 65 x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd. So this is number 1. So write down those 2 things. 169 x squared y to the 4th and 65 x cubed y squared. Okay, so the bad news is you're not allowed to use a calculator. The good news is they're going to be multiple choice on the test, okay? So, what is the one number that they've put in the answer choices? 13. So, let's see if 13 will go into these numbers. Let's double check that. So, 13 into 169. Write this on your paper. 13 into 169. 13 goes into 16 once. And you multiply it, subtract, that gives you 3. Does 13 go into 39? All right, 13 plus 13 is 26, plus another 13 is 39. So it goes in how many times? 3. All right, so it does work. 13 does go into 169, okay? Let's test to see if it goes into 65. That one we may just have to do it on the side of our paper. So what's 13 plus 13? 26 plus another 13? 39 plus another 13. What? 52 plus another 13. 65. Okay, so does 13 go into both of them? Yes. So we know it's going to be A, B, or C because it has to have 13 in the answer. 13 goes into both of them. Now, you look at your x's separately. You've got x squared and x to the third. What's the most they could have in common? 2. So the answer has to have x squared in it. Which one has x squared? A. So it's how many you could take out of both of them. So this has got 2 of them. That's got 3. What's the greatest common amount that you could take from them? Okay. Other questions? Okay, number 2, write it down for me. 25 x to the 5th, y to the 3rd, and 5x squared y. I didn't make this one multiple choice because y'all know how to do this one. Those are pretty easy numbers to work with. So write it down. 25 x to the 5th, y to the 3rd, 5x squared y. All right, so Brandon, what number goes into 25 and 5? 5. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. It's part of my answer. Stephen A., I'm going to look at the x's. I've got x to the 5th and x squared. What's the most they could have in common? So you got 5 of them here, and you got 2 of them here. What's the most that you could take from both of them? 2. You could take 2 from this one, and you could take 2 from that one. So the most you could take, the greatest common amount you could take is 2. X squared. Okay. Shakira, what number do I put with this y up here? 1. And Faith, what's the most you could take from here? Y cubed or y to the 1st? What's the most they could have in common? 1. So 5x squared y to the 1st. All right, number 3 says factor out the GCF. So this one's going to be a little different. So write this down. 21x to the 5th plus 7x cubed minus 14x. All right, when it says factor out the GCF, first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw a line under all of them. You're going to draw a line under both of them. And we're going to put the GCF under all of them. Jeremy, what number goes into 21, 7, and 14? 7. So you're going to write a 7 under all of them. You're going to write a 7 under all of them. So that's your first step. Riley M., I got x to the 5th, x to the 3rd, x to the 1st. What's the most x's that I could take out? 1. Good. You could only take out 1 x. So write x to the 1st under all of them. X to the 1st under all of them. Okay, now we're going to use a rule we learned last week, DS. What does DS mean to do? Very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. 21 divided by 7. 5 minus 1. Positive 7 divided by positive 7. Positive 1. X to the 3rd over x to the 1st. You got to subtract those. That gives you negative 14 divided by 7. Negative 2, x to the 1st over x to the 1st. Good. It cancels right there. Mark it out. It cancels. Last step, almost done. Put it in parentheses. And you have to put the GCF out front. 7x to the 1st. Right here, whatever was on the bottom has to go out front of the parentheses. And that's your answer. 7x to the 1st goes out front, and you put it in parentheses. All right, number 4. Samaria, what's the number that goes into 40 and 36? 2. Madison, any other number that goes into 40 and 36? 4. And just to kind of test, I know 6 goes into 36. Does 6 go into 40? No. I know 8 goes into 40. Does 8 go into 36? No. 12 go into both of them? No. Okay, so what's the greatest common factor? 4. So you write it under both of them. Write it under both of them. Stephen R., what's the most y's that they can have in common? Y to the 5th or y to the 3rd? Y to the 3rd. You pick the smallest one. Y to the 3rd. All right, Hallie, what are we going to do next? All right, so what's 40 divided by 4? And y to the 5th minus y to the 3rd? Y squared. Zach, 36 divided by 4. Elijah, y to the 3rd over y to the 3rd. So we slash it. It cancels. Okay. The last step is to put it in parentheses. Don't forget that. Put it in parentheses. Put your GCF out front. 4y to the 3rd. Put your GCF out front. Okay. If you notice, kind of what we're doing today is working backwards. Because look, if you did your lobster claw, what's 4 times 10? 40. Y to the 3rd and y to the 2nd gives you y to the 5th. And if you do your lobster claw here, 4 times 9 is 36. So we're doing it backwards. Okay. All right, number 5. 12x squared y to the 3rd minus 75 y to the x to the 5th y to the 6th. All right, Jack, what's something that goes into 12 and 75? Okay, does 2 go into both of them? Will 2 go into 75? Yeah. 75's odd.
I thought it was just things you could, I mean, like.
All right, we're seeing what will divide into 12 and 75. So 2 won't go into both of them because 75's odd. So let's go to 3. Will 3 go into 12? Will 3 go into 75? Yes. What's 3 into 75? Think money. Think money. 75 cents. 25, right? 3 times 25 is 75. Okay, so 3 goes into both of these. Chase, how many x's do I write under it? X squared. Elijah, how many y's do I write underneath it? Good. All right, Madison, what do I do next? So what's 12 divided by 3? 4. Stephen R., what happens with x squared and x squared? They cancel when you're dividing them because you're subtracting them. Samaria, what about y cubed and y cubed? Hallie, negative 75 divided by 3. Yep, guys, make sure on your paper you have minus 25. Don't forget about that minus 25. Brandon, x to the 5th over x squared. Jack, y to the 6th over y to the 3rd. Good. Elijah, what's the last step? Very good. Put it in parentheses. Put your GCF out front. Whatever you write underneath goes out front. Okay, number 6, 40 x to the third plus 24 x y to the fifth. Shakira, what goes into 40 and 24? 2? Anything else? Oh, yeah. Good. Good. 8 goes into both of them. All right, and I think that's it. Good. Very good. So 8 is the greatest one that goes into both of them. Faith, how many x's do I write on the bottom? 1. Good. That's just x1 right there. All right, guys, look at this one. I've got y to the fifth right here. Does this one have a y? Can they have a y in common? No, you do not write a y underneath. You do not write a y underneath. Okay. Jeremy, next thing I got to do is divide. 40 divided by 8. And then you subtract your little number, so x squared. Stephen A., 24 divided by 8. 3, good. Stephen A., what happens with x1 and x1? Okay, what are you doing when you're dividing? Subtract them. So that would give you, they cancel out. There you go, good. Drop down your y to the fifth. Drop down your y to the fifth. Zach, what did you do last? Good. So 8x goes on the outside. All right, next section of today. Write down this on your paper, perfect squares. Write those 2 words on your paper, perfect squares. All right, to get perfect squares, you multiply the same numbers over and over. For instance, what's 1 times 1? 1. So write that. That's your first perfect square, 1. What's 2 times 2? 4. 3 times 3. How would I get the next one? What would I do? 4 times 4, which is, make sure y'all are writing these down. 5 times 5. How do I get the next one? 36. Uh-huh. Say it out loud so your classmates know what you're doing. Okay. How'd you get it? All right, we'll stop there. Stop at 100. All right, difference of squares formula. If you have a square here and a square here, it factors to a minus b and a plus b. I know that makes no sense right now, but it will in a minute. Please write down the stuff that's on the board. Okay. Let's start with number 8, and I'll need to fix this for next year. So write this one down. T squared minus 36. T squared minus 36. Let's start with that one. you're going to split it into 2 parentheses. So go ahead and put down 2 parentheses. Go ahead and set up your frame. Do your 2 parentheses. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to split it apart. It's like dropping a bomb on it and splitting it apart. We're going to split this up. T squared, when you split it up, what could give you t squared? T times t. T times t could give you t squared. Okay, so you're putting a t in each of them. And you're putting it in the front because t squared was in the front. All right, now we're going to split up 36, but you need to split it evenly. So let's go back to here. How did we get 36? What times what? 6 times 6 is what you have to use. So you're going to put a 6 and a 6. And it's always going to be a plus and a minus. Plus and a minus. All right, you do not have to write this next part down in red. I just want to show you. Look, if you lobster claw this, t times t is what? T squared. T times negative 6. Okay. Positive 6 times t. And 6 times negative 6. All right, what happens to negative 6t and positive 6t? So you're left with t squared minus 36. Okay, so we're doing it backwards. All right, how about writing this one down? 9x to the 4th minus 4. 9x to the 4th minus 4. All right, splitting it into 2 parentheses. See how it has 2 parts? So you're putting it into 2 parentheses, okay? All right, we're going to split the 9x to the 4th first. So we're going to split that one first. What times what gives you 9? 3, so you have to put a 3 in the front with both of them. Put a 3 in the front. How does x to the 4th split? X squared and x squared. You're going to put it right beside the 3 because x to the 4th was right beside the 9. So you're going to keep the same pattern. So x squared and x squared. All right, in the back, you've got to split up the 4. How does the 4 split? 2 times 2. And your signs are always going to be, all right, that's called difference of squares because they're squares. They're called perfect squares. And difference means to subtract. So that's what you'll hear your teachers call them next year, to difference of squares. Okay, you don't need to write all that down. Only thing you need to write down is this, 9p squared minus 100. 9p squared minus 100. All right, Zach, tell me one answer choice that's wrong and why. B is wrong. Why? All right, they didn't split the 9 up. They just left it as 9. They didn't split the 9, so we can mark out B. Good. Shakira, what other answer choice is wrong and why? A, why? They're both minuses, so that can't be right. Faith, what other answer choice is wrong and why? What? D, why? They're both pluses. It should be a minus and a plus. The sign should be different because it's difference of squares. Here's another way to think about it. What's the only way to get negative 100? Negative 10 times positive 10. The signs have to be different to get you a negative 100. So this one is C. All right, let's look at this one. 49x squared minus 484. Okay, that's a crazy big number, but it's multiple choice. So we're just going to do process of elimination. So don't get worried about it. We're just going to do process of elimination. We'll be just fine. Elijah, what's one answer I can mark out and why? A, why? They both have minuses. Hallie, what's another answer I can mark out and why? B, both have minuses. Okay. All right, Samario, What's the difference between C and D? All right, so they have the numbers in different orders. Look at this front number. What's this front number? How does 49 split? 49's in the front, so 7 should be in the front. All right, last two. 9x squared minus 1. Last two. You got this. Riley M., tell me one thing to do up here. Good. Chase, tell me something else to do. Into what? Jack, something else I need to do. To what? What do I write right here? And here? Good. Madison, something else I should do. Help you out here. So, 1, you're not going to split it in half. You just want to do what times what. Remember, parentheses mean to times. What times what gives you 1? 1. 1 times 1 will give you 1. Okay, so it's what times it will get you that. Stephen R., what should my signs be? What do I put in the middle of them? Plus and a minus. Plus and a minus. And that's your answer. Okay, number 12, 36 minus x squared. Brandon, first thing to do. Stephen A., what else? What times what gives you 36? And do I put it in the front or the back? The front. Good, because 36 is in the front. So I put 6 in the front. Madison, what else do I do? What does that become? What times what gives you x squared? X times x. Okay. Jeremy, what should my signs be? Very good. Plus and minus. Anybody have a question? All right. Oh, yeah.